You're not in the will, Claire. Dad made that clear, my brother said, folding the papers right after the funeral. I stared at him. That's not possible. He shrugged. Guess you weren't the favorite. Then his lawyer cleared his throat and said, There's just one signature we need to verify. I'm Danielle Harper. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the responsible one. Not the loud one. Not the impressive one. The one who shows up early, stays late, and never gets thanked for it. I work as a public school counselor in a small district outside of Pittsburgh. I don't make much, but I care deeply about what I do. I sit with kids who feel invisible, and I understand them because I grew up feeling the same way. In our family, my older brother Tyler was the one they always praised. He ran Dad's small construction business and loved the spotlight. He was the one at every holiday dinner telling stories that made the room laugh, slapping backs, pouring drinks, making sure everyone knew he was in charge. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the daughter who handled hospital visits, insurance forms, and pharmacy runs while Tyler handled appearances. When Dad got sick with cancer 2 years ago, I rearranged my entire work schedule to take him to chemotherapy treatments every Tuesday and Thursday. I sat in those plastic waiting room chairs so many times that I memorized the pattern of cracks in the ceiling tiles. The smell of antiseptic and stale coffee became the soundtrack of my mornings. Tyler showed up when people were watching. He'd arrive for 15 minutes with flowers and a camera-ready smile, post something online about being a devoted son, and then disappear until the next performance. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I didn't drive a nice car or own property, but I had something they didn't expect. I paid attention. I listened. I kept records. After the funeral, I thought we would grieve together. I thought losing Dad would bring us closer. I was wrong. If you've ever been the responsible one while someone else got all the praise, subscribe. I see you. Tell me in the comments, were you the quiet backbone of your family? Click hype if you've ever been underestimated. Let's get into what happened next. The reading of the will happened 3 days after we buried my father. A small law office on the second floor of a brick building downtown. The carpet was thin and gray. The walls were bare except for 2 framed diplomas and a clock that ticked louder than it should have. Tyler walked in like he already owned the room. He didn't sit. He leaned against the wall near the window with his arms crossed and his chin up, already acting like every decision had been made in his favor. The lawyer, a man named Gerald Fisk, opened a folder and began reading. The house went to Tyler. The construction business went to Tyler. Dad's savings account, his truck, his tools, his life insurance. All of it. Tyler, I sat there with my hands in my lap, waiting for my name. It never came. The only thing left to me was a sealed personal letter. That was it. A letter. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Dad promised we'd split everything, I said. My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. Tyler didn't even look at me. He just leaned back and said, Maybe he changed his mind when you stopped being around. I turned to face him. I was at every chemo appointment, every single one. He shrugged like I'd told him it might rain tomorrow. Gerald Fisk shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He adjusted his glasses and mentioned quietly that the will had been updated approximately 2 months before Dad passed away. 2 months. That was right in the middle of his hardest stretch of treatment. Tyler smirked across the room. I guess he trusted me more. That smirk burned a hole through my chest, but I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I reached across the table and asked to see the paperwork myself. Gerald hesitated, then slid the folder toward me. I opened it and looked at the final page. Dad's signature, except it wasn't right. The angle was off. The pressure was uneven. The slant leaned differently than every birthday card, every check, every document I had ever watched him sign in 30 years. I didn't say anything. I closed the folder and placed it back on the table. 6 weeks later, the judge assigned to approve the probate filing paused during a routine review. She looked over her glasses at both lawyers and said calmly, Before we finalize this, I have a question about that signature. The weeks between the will reading and the court date were some of the loneliest of my life. Tyler moved fast. Within days, he changed the locks on the family home. I drove over one Saturday morning to pick up a box of childhood photos and a quilt my grandmother had made. The front door had a new deadbolt. I stood on the porch and called him. He didn't answer. 10 minutes later, I got a text. It's my house now. 5 words. No apology, no explanation. I sat in my car in the driveway of the house I grew up in and stared at the front window where Dad used to sit in his recliner watching the evening news. The curtains were already different. The second betrayal came at a family dinner a few weeks later. My aunt hosted it at her house. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, the same menu she'd been making for 20 years. The dining room smelled like butter and gravy and old wood polish. Tyler arrived late and loud. He pulled out a chair, dropped into it, and started talking about streamlining the business. Then he looked at me across the table and said, Danielle always thought she deserved more than she earned. My aunt nodded slowly. Nobody said a word in my defense. Not one person. I set my fork down gently. My throat burned. I left before dessert. I drove home with the windows down because the cold air was the only thing that kept me from breaking apart on the highway. The third betrayal was calculated. Tyler called me one evening, and for a moment, his voice almost sounded kind. He said he wanted to make this easier for both of us. Then he emailed me a legal waiver, a single document that would permanently give up my right to contest the will. He followed up with a text, "Don't drag this out. You'll just embarrass yourself." I read that waiver 3 times. Every clause was designed to silence me. I didn't sign it. That night, I sat on my kitchen floor with my laptop balanced on my knees and started researching probate law. I read case studies until 2 in the morning. I searched for precedents involving contested signatures and diminished mental capacity. I requested Dad's medical records and treatment timelines from the hospital. I stopped reacting. I stopped crying in my car. I started building something. The pain didn't go away. It just changed shape. It became focus. What they didn't know is that I had something my brother never expected. During Dad's final months, when I was the one sorting through decades of paperwork in his cluttered home office, I didn't just organize. I preserved. The room smelled like sawdust and old newspaper. Stacks of folders sat on every surface, and I went through them one by one. I scanned important papers and uploaded them to a secure cloud account. Tax records, business filings, personal letters, and one very important document, Dad's earlier will, the original. The one he had drafted 4 years before his diagnosis. In that version, everything was split evenly between Tyler and me, 50-50, clear and fair. I also saved a personal email Dad had sent me 14 months before he died. The subject line was simply family, family. In it, he wrote, "I want things fair between you and your brother. I don't want either of you fighting over what I leave behind." I read that email so many times I could recite it from memory, but there was one more thing. During those final weeks of treatment, I had stayed close to the nursing staff. I asked questions. I took notes. And one of the senior nurses had documented something that mattered more than she realized at the time. A note in Dad's medical chart confirmed he was under heavy sedation and strong pain medication during the exact week the new will was supposedly signed. His hands shook so badly that week he could barely hold a cup of water. I had a plan they never saw coming. Not a loud one. Not an angry one. Instead of confronting Tyler at another dinner table or begging my family to believe me, I quietly filed a formal objection in probate court. No announcement, no warning, just paperwork, filed on a Tuesday morning before Tyler even woke up. There was one person in my life who still remembered my father the way he actually was. His name was Arthur Brennan. He was a semi-retired attorney who had known my dad for over 30 years. He drafted the original will. He handled the early paperwork when Dad started the construction business. He came to our birthday parties when we were kids. He once told me I reminded him of my father because I read things carefully before I agreed to them. Arthur wasn't involved in the updated will. Tyler had used a different lawyer, someone younger, someone who didn't ask too many questions. When I called Arthur and told him what had happened, he went quiet for a long time. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. Finally, he said, "Your father told me more than once that he wanted fairness between you two." Those were his words. Fairness. I sent Arthur a copy of the contested signature. He compared it to samples he had on file from years of prior documents. He called me back the next evening. His voice was careful but certain. This doesn't look right, Danielle. Danielle. Arthur agreed to help me request a formal handwriting analysis through the court. He also helped me file for a medical capacity review based on the hospital records and the nurse's notes. Meanwhile, Tyler was telling everyone who would listen that I was being bitter and vindictive. He told our cousins I was desperate for money. He told our aunt I was dragging Dad's name through the mud. He posted on social media about protecting family legacy from jealousy. He was loud. He was confident. He was confident. He believed the court would side with him because it always seemed like the world sided with Tyler. The court date was set for a Thursday in March. Tyler's lawyer filed standard responses. No counterclaims. No additional evidence. They assumed this would be a formality. I stayed silent. I stayed steady, and I waited. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls. Fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. The air smelled like floor wax and old paper. 2 tables faced the judge's bench. Tyler sat on the left with his attorney, a man named Craig Loomis, who spoke quickly and smiled too often. I sat on the right with Arthur. My hands were folded on the table. My heart was pounding, but my face was still. The judge, a woman named Honorable Patricia Voss, reviewed the document slowly. She didn't rush. She read every page like it mattered. Tyler shifted in his chair. His confidence was still there, but it was thinner now, quieter. Craig Loomis spoke first. Your Honor, the will in question was properly executed. Everything was signed in accordance with legal procedure. Arthur stood. Your Honor, we'd like to present the decedent's prior will, dated 4 years earlier, along with a personal email in which he explicitly expressed his intention to divide assets equally between his 2 children, spirit children. He placed both documents on the bench. Judge Voss read the email twice. Then Arthur called the handwriting expert. A forensic analyst named Dr. Linda Choi took the stand. She displayed enlarged images of the contested signature alongside 12 prior signature samples from the deceased. She pointed to pressure variations, stroke angles, and letter spacing. Her conclusion was measured but clear. The signature on the contested document shows significant deviation from established patterns. These inconsistencies are more indicative of either guided assistance or physical incapacity rather than voluntary execution. The courtroom was quiet. Then Arthur presented the nurse's medical notes. They confirmed that during the week the updated will was signed, my father was receiving high-dose pain medication and was noted to have limited motor function in both hands. Judge Voss turned to Tyler. Her voice was calm but direct. Harper, can you explain why this signature differs so significantly from your father's established handwriting? Tyler sat up straight. His jaw moved before his words did. He was sick. His hand shook. I spoke for the first time. My voice didn't waver. He couldn't even hold a pen that week. I was there. I watched him try to hold a cup of water and fail. The room went completely silent. No shuffling papers. No coughing. Just the hum of the lights above. Judge Voss removed her glasses and set them on the bench. She announced that the contested will was being declared invalid pending a full investigation. She temporarily reinstated the prior will, which divided all assets equally. Tyler's face drained of color. His lawyer closed his folder and didn't speak again. Tyler looked at me across the aisle. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. His arrogance didn't collapse all at once. It folded in slowly, like a house built on sand finally meeting the tide. I didn't celebrate that night. There was no champagne, no victory call. I drove home in silence with the windows up and the radio off. I sat in my apartment and stared at the wall for a long time. Relief came slowly. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. The court process moved forward over the following weeks. The house was appraised and sold. The business assets were evaluated independently. Everything was divided equally, just as my father had originally intended. Tyler didn't fight the ruling. His lawyer quietly withdrew from the case. Tyler stopped coming to family events. He didn't call me. He didn't text. He just disappeared into a silence I think he always feared more than anything. Some relatives reached out to me quietly. My aunt sent a short message that said, I should have spoken up at that dinner. I'm sorry. A cousin called and admitted she had believed Tyler's version without question. I didn't hold it against them, but I didn't pretend it hadn't hurt either. I opened my father's personal letter for the first time the night the estate was settled. Inside, in his shaky but unmistakable handwriting, he had written, "Danielle, you were always the one who stayed. Don't let anyone tell you that doesn't count." I held that letter against my chest and finally cried. Not from sadness, from being seen. I didn't fight for money. I fought for the truth. I fought for my father's real wishes, the ones he wrote down before someone tried to rewrite them, and I walked away knowing I had protected not just my share, but his legacy, the real one, not the version Tyler tried to sell in. If someone ever tried to push you out of what was rightfully yours, you know how painful that feels. Have you ever been cut out of a will or treated unfairly after a loss? Share your story in the comments. Subscribe to join a community that stands up for truth. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else. Thank you for being here and for listening.